We are in the last days, and the book is being opened up to us. The Bible tells us who the Antichrist is, and when we combine that with the history of this last generation, this is where we find the truth. This isn't clickbait, and these aren't generalizations. So join me as Daniel shows us in the Bible who the Antichrist is. There have been 4 kingdoms that have risen out of the sea, meaning such the time of the great flood. We have seen 4 major kingdoms that have ruled, that have held dominion over the earth. 3 of these kingdoms are spoken of throughout Daniel repeatedly. The first of these kingdoms is Egypt. It was Egypt and the pharaohs that held dominion over the inhabitants of the earth. The second kingdom to hold dominion over the inhabitants of the earth was the Babylonian Empire. Babylon was ruled by the Assyrians, then the Hittites, then the Chaldeans, before finally the Persians took control of Babylon. And the third kingdom was Grecia, as we know as Greece, which of course began with Alexander the Great and his rule and reign. In Daniel 10 in the Bible, this is when we see that Daniel received his vision. It was the 3rd year, and Cyrus was the king of Persia. In Daniel 10:20 it says, "Then he said, 'Do you know why I have come to you? And now I must return to fight with the prince of Persia. And when I have gone forth, indeed the prince of Greece will come.'" So we can see just from this very verse right here that it was Greece that was going to rule after the Babylonians, after the Persian Empire fell. And that is exactly what happened. It was in October of 331 BC, after Alexander the Great had conquered Egypt, that he was able, with his troops, to defeat Darius, the king of the Persians. Alexander proclaimed himself king of Persia, and this began the rule of Grecia. Daniel 11:2 says, "And now I will tell you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings will arise in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than them all. By his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Greece." The vast majority of biblical scholars do all tend to agree that this was speaking to those final Persian rulers at the time of Daniel when he received this vision. This strong, rich 4th king was, of course, the Persian king Xerxes, and he did stir up all against the realm of Greece. "Then a mighty king shall arise, who shall rule with great dominion, and do according to his will. And when he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken up and divided toward the 4 winds of heaven." Alexander the Great died at the age of 32 years old. After his death, the Greek Empire was divided, and 4 of his generals each took control of a section. So this part of Daniel's vision seems to undoubtedly be speaking about Alexander the Great and Greece. Going off of statues and first-hand witness descriptions of what Alexander the Great looked like in appearance, they have done this rendering, and this is what Alexander the Great most likely really looked like. All of these beasts who have risen out of the sea have had many things in common. Not only are they kingdoms, but they are empires. They have all been power hungry. They have all wanted dominion over the entire earth. They have all taken dominion by force, and that's not all they share in common. The Persian Empire tried to wipe out the Jewish people during the reign of Xerxes through the plot of Haman, as shown in the book of Esther. The Greek Empire tried to wipe out the Jewish people during the reign of Antichrist IV, when he attempted to kill every Jew who did not renounce their commitment to God, as well as embrace Greek culture. And we all know fully well what the Egyptians did to the Jews with their 430 years of slavery and captivity, and that Pharaoh tried to wipe them out completely. And if it were not for our Heavenly Father sending Moses and helping to free them and rescue them, he would have killed every last one of them. Okay, I have a great deal more to show you all that goes with this and with all of these kingdoms. And it is going to absolutely blow your mind when you see what I have to show you. But before I do, this is where in Daniel 11 it changes, and this is where it shows us who the Antichrist is. Daniel 11:5 says, "And the king of the south shall be strong, and one of his princes, and he shall be strong above him, and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion." Now, in Daniel 11, there are several references to the king of the north and the king of the south, and it is very important for us to understand that all of Daniel 11 is about Persia. Understanding this, then it becomes easy to identify who the king of the north is and who the king of the south is. Looking at a map of the Persian Empire, the north is the territory all to the north of the Zagros Mountains as well as the Tigris River. The south is the territory, of course, below that. Iran, which encompasses the majority of modern-day Persia. It is Iraq that is the southern part. So, looking at our modern-day map, we can see very clearly that the king of the north is speaking about Iran, and the king of the south is speaking about Iraq. And history also confirms this. And if you'll bear with me just for a minute here, I'm going to show you the proof of everything that you've just seen. Now, it's in Daniel 11:6 where we see the switch from where it's no longer talking about the ancient days of Alexander the Great, but it is turned and it's talking about the end. And this is where it says, "And in the end of years, they shall join themselves together. For the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement. But she shall not retain the power of the arm, neither shall he stand, nor his arm." Now this verse is speaking about the king's daughter being, that is Syria. And it is Syria that came to Iran to make an agreement. But Iran and Syria were not at this time able to stand. "But out of a branch of her roots shall one stand up in his estate, which shall come with an army, and shall enter into the fortress of the king of the north, and shall deal against them, and shall prevail." It was in 1980 and 1981 when the Iran-Iraq war began. Active hostilities began with the Iraqi invasion of Iran and lasted for nearly 8 years. Iraq's primary rationale for the attack against Iran cited the need to prevent Ruhollah Khomeini, who had spearheaded the Iranian Revolution in 1979, from exporting the new Iranian ideology to Iraq. Ruhollah Khomeini, he also severed ties with Egypt due to its signing of the Camp David Accords with Israel, and tensions only deepened between Egypt and Iran because of Egypt's support of Iraq during this war. So the king of the south shall come into his kingdom, and shall return into his own land, but his son shall be stirred up, and shall assemble a multitude of great forces, and one shall certainly come, and overflow, and pass through, then shall he return, and be stirred up even to his fortress. 1982 to 1987, the Iranian offensive stalemate and the tanker war. In May 1982, Iranian forces recaptured Khorramshahr. Iraq voluntarily withdrew its forces from all captured Iranian territory soon after and began seeking a peace agreement with Iran. But under the leadership of Ruhollah Khomeini, who saw Saddam as an obstacle to the Islamic Revolution, Iran remained intransigent and continued the war in an effort to overthrow the Iraqi leader. In July, Iranian forces invaded Iraq's al-Basra province. Iraq's defenses solidified once its troops were defending their own soil, and the war settled down into a stalemate with a static, entrenched front-running just inside and along Iraq's border. And the king of the south shall be moved with choler, and shall come forth and fight with him, even with the king of the north. And he shall set forth a great multitude, but the multitude shall be given into his hand. And when he hath taken away the multitude, his heart shall be lifted up, and he shall cast down many 10,000s, but he shall not be strengthened by it. Iran repeatedly launched fruitless infantry attacks using human assault waves, composed partly of untrained and unarmed conscripts, often young boys snatched from the streets, which were repelled by the superior firepower and air power of the Iraqis. Both nations engaged in sporadic air and missile attacks against each other's cities and military and oil installations. In 1987, the military balance began to favor Iraq, which had raised an army of about 1 million and had obtained state-of-the-art arms from France and the Soviet Union, including thousands of artillery pieces, tanks, and armored personnel carriers, and hundreds of combat aircraft. This arsenal, enormous for a country of some 18 million inhabitants, was bolstered by the addition of substantial quantities of chemical weapons, which the regime acquired or produced throughout the 1980s. At the same time, Iraq committed substantial resources in an attempt to develop or purchase other weapons of mass destruction, including biological and nuclear arms. For the king of the north shall return, and shall set forth a multitude greater than the former, and shall certainly come after certain years, with a great army and much riches. In 1988, escalation and ceasefire. In early 1988, Iranian forces, in cooperation with Iraqi Kurds, threatened the area from Kirkuk to the Turkish border and penetrated to the towns of 3 of the towns in the northeastern province of Iraq. They met with stiff resistance in the north, however. And in those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south. Also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fall. Now, I'm not trying to bore anybody showing y'all any of this. I just want y'all to be able to see the proof in what we can read clearly in Daniel 11. And we all know what happened to Saddam Hussein, the king of the south, and how many stood against him and how he fell. So we've heard a lot now about Ruhollah Khomeini. And it's very obvious that he was the very, very first king of the north. We see this through all the things that happened in modern times. But he's not the only king. And when we start really looking at the other kings, this is where we see who the Antichrist is. Daniel 7:24 gives us a huge helping clue to understand who the Antichrist is. And it says, "And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first." After the Iranian Revolution of 1979, Iran decided to start having duly elected presidents of their nation. Now, how legitimate these electoral processes are seems to be in high question amongst the people. But that doesn't change the fact that there have been exactly 9 elected presidents of Iran at this time. And this is what's truly, truly interesting. Because when you add in Ruhollah Khomeini, who is the first supreme leader of Iran. Now, the second supreme leader, and there's only been 2 of them at all, is actually his son, Ali Khamenei. And you'll notice that he was actually the 3rd president of Iran. So when we're looking at this in totality, that's 10 kings. 10 kings of the north. Now, there are a lot of very interesting things that go with this. But what you will probably notice right here is these first 3 presidents. All 3 of them were in the same year of 1981. And 1981, on the Gentile calendar going into 82, is the year of the Jubilee. Now, there's a lot more that goes with this that we have in Scripture that's going to show you that this is exactly who it's speaking about. Now, also with Ruhollah Khomeini, whenever he died, he was in the hospital 11 days. What we are looking at is the 11th leader, the 11th king of the north is the Antichrist. And it's also no coincidence that Daniel 11 is the very passage that shows us who the Antichrist is. "But he that cometh against him shall do according to his own will, and none shall stand before him. And he shall stand in the glorious land, which by his hand shall be consumed." Now, not only did we see Iraq and everything, it fell into ruins in a hard way over the years. Not only did all of this begin because of the choices and the things that Khomeini had been doing and the things that he set up in Iran as the supreme leader, his choices, it also wound up being the exact problem that happened in Iran, in his very own land, because of all of his choices and everything he's been pushing in Iran. The sanctions that were put against Iran brought it into economic ruin for the entire land of people. Now, I'm not going to go over every single verse because we can clearly see how the very beginning of so much of Daniel 11 is talking about the war in Iran and Iraq. But I'm going to go over just a few other ones that I think people will be having questions about. "He shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with them. Thus shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter of women, corrupting her. But she shall not stand on his side, neither before him." Now, this verse seems to undoubtedly be speaking about Saudi Arabia. It was Saudi Arabia that stood with Iraq, that financed Iraq during the Iran-Iraq war, and has not stood on the side of Iran. We can also see from this, with the oil exporting capacity of both nations, how it was so severely reduced at various times that it just resulted in the economic hardship and ruin of both the North and the South in the land of Persia. And again, this is because of Khomeini and his choices. Then he shall turn his face toward the fort of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall and not be found. On June 3rd, 1989, this is when Khomeini died after having 5 heart attacks in a 10-day period, and again he was in the hospital for 11 days before he died. Then shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes in the glory of the kingdom, but within few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle.
Breaking news out of Iran, where state media has now confirmed the death of President Ibrahim Raisi and the country's foreign minister after a deadly helicopter crash. Now, rescue crews are now at a staging area. Those are live pictures where they are trying to assess where exactly the wreckage is and to begin their recovery efforts. Iranian officials say the helicopter ran into trouble amid heavy fog on Sunday afternoon. Images of the crash site in Iran's East Azerbaijan province show the remote mountainous area where the aircraft went down. And you are looking at a photo of it right there. The president and other officials had been attending a ceremony for the opening of a new dam near the border with Azerbaijan. Rescuers faced difficult weather conditions overnight, including cold and heavy fog, as they scrambled to locate the crash site.
Now, not only was Raisi the 8th president of Iran, his term, because of his death, was exactly 3 years, or otherwise 3 days, as many of us understand. But on top of all of this, he is the raiser of taxes. He is the president that raised the taxes for all the people in Iran to compensate for the low oil income. You want to talk about seeing prophecy fulfilled before your very eyes. We are undoubtedly seeing that, and this is truly amazing. And I know that I'm having to prove this to all of y'all, because it's going to be difficult for a lot of people to understand or want to believe this. But as you can see, the proof is there. The other thing that's very interesting about Raisi is that he died on May 19th of 2024. And a lot of y'all may remember this because we were watching and looking. For us, it was May 18th. And that would have been Pentecost on God's calendar if there was not the added extra month. And I'd have to go back and really look at the months and do a good count, which I might wind up doing. But Khomeini dying on June 3rd of 1989, I'm actually willing to bet that that as well was Pentecost on God's calendar. And this is no coincidence. And again, we are not looking at the Jewish perpetual calendar, which is off by a few days all the time. We're actually looking at the Lord's calendar, which he instructed us to go by in the Bible. Now, there is something I have to mention, and that's after Raisi died, the vice president became the acting president, but only for a very short amount of time until they could have new elections. And if I recall correctly, it was only 50 days. So, this is what's in question. Now, if the Lord sees this vice president as counting towards this, then that means that the president who is in office now is the Antichrist, because that would make him the 11th. But if the vice president does not count as a king of the north, because he was only there temporarily and wasn't actually an elected official, it just depends on the Lord, then that means that there is one to come after the one that we see in office right now, and that he will be the Antichrist. And in his estate shall stand up a vile person, to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. So we can see right here that how this fits exactly, because he is elected. Now, he's going to be campaigning to all of those who actually get to make these decisions. But we can see how this fits exactly now. And with the arms of a flood shall they be overflown from before him, and shall be broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant. So this covenant that is made, that is broken, is obviously going to be with just mainly those in the Middle East. That is the main focus, because that is what we see all throughout Daniel. It is going to be about Iraq and Iran, and Iran being the maker of the covenant and the breaker of the covenant. Yes, Israel will be involved, Egypt will be involved, Saudi Arabia will be involved. It even mentions Jordan in Daniel. All of those Middle Eastern nations are going to be involved in this covenant that is going to be broken by Iran. Now, I know there's going to be people out there that say Israel would never accept someone from Iran as their Messiah. But we have to remember in 2 Thessalonians, where it speaks directly about the Antichrist. And it says, "And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness." So because the Lord is going to send a strong delusion to the people who are not his followers, they are going to believe the lie. And what are the Jews looking for? What are the requirements for the coming Messiah? He will rebuild the temple. He will be of Jewish ancestry, meaning his mother will have to be Jewish or of Jewish heritage. Now, whether this be true or be a lie that comes from Antichrist, it doesn't matter. What matters is what the Jews believe, and the Jews will believe it. He will also have to be a descendant from the tribe of Judah. These are the major requirements for the Messiah. Okay, now we know who the Antichrist is. And I've shown you all of that, and I know it's pretty mind-blowing. But now I have some more amazing things to show you. We see so much importance with the land in the Middle East. And we know that Noah's Ark came to rest at the base of Mount Ararat. The other thing that we know is that the descendants of Shem, now they went down to Ur, and this is where they built their populace. The name Semite comes from Shem, the oldest of the 3 sons of Noah. In the Greek and Latin versions of the Bible, Shem becomes Sem, since neither Greek nor Latin has any way of representing the initial sound of the Hebrew name. So this is where you see anti-Semitism. So anyone who is a Semite is only a direct descendant of Shem. Now we know that Abraham, he went with his dad and his brother, and they went to the town of Ur. Now, one of the issues is that there was a study done by a man a long time ago who said that Ur must be in the lower part of Mesopotamia, thinking that it's over by Babylon, and this isn't true. And actually, Ur is up where Haran is. In fact, it's exactly where it was. We know from the Bible that Ur tells us that it was up in northern Mesopotamia. And we also know that Abraham crossed the Euphrates River to go to the land of Canaan whenever God gave him the land. The Bible also lets us know that Ham and his descendants, they went to the land of Egypt. So in Psalm 105 it says, Israel also came into Egypt. Thus Jacob sojourned in the land of Ham, and he caused his people to be very fruitful, and made them stronger than their adversaries. He turned their heart to hate his people, to deal craftily with his servants. Now, the Egyptian Empire, their rule and reign was, of course, over most of the Middle East as well. And what we also see with the Egyptian Empire, it was Canaan. Some of his descendants had migrated upward and were residing in the land of milk and honey, the land of Israel, as we now call it today. Now, the land of Israel was also ancient in Judah, and it wasn't until after the Bar Kokhba revolt of 132 to 136 AD that the Roman Emperor Hadrian renamed the region Syria Palestina to punish the Jewish people for their insurrection by naming it after their two traditional enemies, the Syrians and the Philistines. There's an author named Tom Robbins, and he has suggested the term Palestine originates from the ancient androgynous false god Pales, who was worshipped in the region of Canaan. If this is so, then the Palestine means land of Pales. But most believe that the name derives from the Greek for the land of the Philistines. And for those of you who do not know, Pales is the false god that is the equivalent of the Greek Pan, that is also a false god. When we look at the Egyptian Empire, the Persian Empire, and the Greek Empire, their rule and reign in their territory, something becomes very clear. Looking at the maps, we can see that the land of Israel, if this is the temple looking down on it, then all the land that we see that has been fought over for territories for these empires looks very much like what would be the courtyard outside of the temple. And all the land outside of that would be outside the courtyard temple walls. And looking at it like this now, we can kind of get a good idea of why so many have fought so fiercely over this area of land. This most holy land that people can feel, so many over the centuries can feel, that it's very, very special. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because this is going to blow your socks off what I'm about to show you. So we go to Daniel 7, and Daniel 7:3 says, "And the four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse from one another." Now, we talked about this earlier in the beginning of the video. The four great beasts that come from the sea, they came up out of the flood since the time of the flood. The first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Now, this very first beast, this is very obviously speaking about Egypt. Ezekiel 32:2 says, "Son of man, take up a lamentation for Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and say unto him, Thou art like a young lion of the nations, and thou art as a well in the sea. And thou camest forth with thy rivers, and troublest the waters with thy feet, and foulest their rivers." Right here in this verse alone, we see the young lion of nations. And of course, we see the well in the sea, representing the Leviathan. In Ezekiel 29:3, it says, "Speak and say, Thus says the Lord God, Behold, I am against thee, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, the great dragon that lieth in the midst of the rivers, which hath said, My river is mine own, and I have made it for myself." So again, just in this verse alone, we see Egypt and Pharaoh as the great dragon. Both of these verses show absolute proof that Egypt is the very first beast. And in Exodus 9:12 we see, "But the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he did not heed them, just as the Lord had spoken to Moses." So here again we have a reference to the Lord and the heart of the Pharaoh. We know that the Lord carried the Jews out of Egypt on an eagle's wings. We have the scripture that says so. We know that the Egyptians chased after him. Pharaoh did. And what did the Lord do? At the Red Sea crossing, he destroyed all the Egyptians when he let the water come down on him. So he plucked the wings of the eagle that was in pursuit. Not only was the Pharaoh, which was Ramses II, not only was he an adversary to the Israelites and to Moses, but we know that he tried to willfully stand against God himself. And this is what took the plagues to get him to release the Israelites from Egypt. And his reign was 66 years. And behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. Now this is very obviously talking about the Persian Empire. The bear is the Persian Empire, and the 3 ribs in the mouth represent the Assyrian, the Hittites, and the Chaldean. Now, I know a lot of y'all already know and understand this, and this isn't what I have to show you that's really big. I'm going to get to that, but this is for all those who don't know, who don't understand this part, so that they will clearly understand everyone what I'm about to show as soon as I finish going through these verses very quickly. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. And this we see again with the 4 heads. This, of course, is representing Grecia, the empire of Greece with Alexander the Great. And the 4 heads, again, are his 4 generals. When the empire was broken up after his death, his 4 generals each took a section of the empire. Now I know that there are a great many of people out there who have tried to decipher Daniel 7. I've seen many of them, and I've even read even more of them. And the biggest mistake that so many of them make is that they think that Daniel's vision only was from where he was at in that certain point in time and going forward. And it's not. Daniel's vision was an end-time vision that encompassed throughout the centuries, from the very beginning when the flood first occurred, until the very end when Jesus will return. Okay, this is where it gets mind-boggling. So with Egypt, what I realized whenever I was studying is that Egypt's empire, it lasted 500 years. The Persian Empire, now it reigned for 400 years. And the Greece Empire reigned exactly 300 years. The Egyptian Empire had Ramses the Great, while the Persian Empire had Cyrus the Great. Then, of course, Greece, it had Alexander the Great. So this has been a tremendous amount of research and work. And when I first started out, I didn't realize so much about all these different kings that are named the Great. So when I noticed that Cyrus the Great and I noticed Alexander the Great, I started wondering, well, were any of the pharaohs called anything the Great? So that's when I went and looked, and that's when it showed Ramses II. Ramses II was called Ramses the Great. And lo and behold, it is specifically Ramses II that was the pharaoh that was part of the Exodus. He is the one who had the Egyptians chase the Israelites through the Red Sea, the one that God brought the 10 plagues on because he hardened his heart. And yes, I know that Darius and a couple of the others were called the Great as well. But out of the Persian, once the Persian Empire started its reign, it is Cyrus who was the first to be called the Great out of them. Now, the other thing I noticed when I was looking at this is when we add up all the years combined that we see right here, it is 1,200 years. So the very next thing that I noticed was whenever Alexander the Great, when he began to rule, when his empire came into power, it was 331 BC. And when his empire fell, it was in 31 BC. And that made me realize something. When Jesus, whenever he died, whenever he was crucified, yes, it was 32 AD, but remember, it was only by 3 months. So going off the Jewish calendar, that would still be the year 31. And for anyone who's new to my channel, I have shown over and over till I'm almost blue in the face that without doubt, without question, we know biblical scholars and historians have pinpointed when Jesus was crucified, as well as Gabriel in Daniel's vision shows us very precisely that Jesus was absolutely crucified in the year 32 AD. Now, we all also know there's no year 0, but in the year 31 BC, when the Greek Empire fell, this was at the very, very beginning of that year. And when Jesus, when he was crucified, it was towards the end part of the year. There was only like 3 months left before it became the new year. So, that period between the fall of the Greek Empire and the crucifixion of Jesus was exactly 60 years. And this is amazing because we see double parallels in so many things in Scripture, even triple. And when I say parallels, I mean meanings. Now, this does not take away from anything in tribulation or the end times. But undoubtedly, right here, we can see the 1,260. So, that made me also go look at something else. In Daniel 12:7, it says, "And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a times and an half, and when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all things shall be finished." Now, it's no surprise here that this is Daniel 12:7, because it is the very last feast when we see when Jesus returns. It is when the 7th seal is opened. It is when the 7th bowl is poured out. It is also when the 7th and final fulfillment will be completed at this time as well. So it's no surprise that we would see 2 meanings, 2 correlations with the 1,260. So many of us already know and understand who the 4th beast is. But there's still quite a few who don't or are misunderstanding, because there's a lot of people out there who like to do a lot of videos and content, and they say things that are not correct, and it's kind of leading quite a few astray. So we're going to go over who the 4th beast is. So it's undeniable, absolutely undeniable. And we're going to go over that in a minute. But let me finish showing you this timeline. Because what I did was go from the year 2031. Because again, we keep seeing the year 31 coming up throughout history. So going backwards, subtracting 1,260 from 2031 takes us to the year 771. And the year 771 AD is enormous. It plays huge significance in our timeline. And I'm about to show you why. But first, before that, what we see is we see a timeline has emerged. And this is amazing, because looking at our timeline that we now have, we can of course see the first three beasts. They took up the first 1200 years. And then there's that period of 60 years where almost 30 of it was in preparing the way for Jesus, our King, to come down and rule and reign. And while he was here for 32 and a half years. 32 and a half years outside of the womb, and 33 years and 3 months when we count inside his mom's womb while she was pregnant with him, of course. But we've already gotten into that. Okay, so what we also know and understand, that it was throughout all this time that the Roman Empire was trying to rule and reign. They were trying to be the dominant empire and rule all the lands. But the problem with the Roman Empire is that they were never able to truly reign over the inhabitants of the earth, because they were constantly divided. They were constantly divided between east and west and could not get along inside their house. And as Jesus said, he said, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself will not stand. And that was the problem with the Roman Empire, and that's why it never could succeed. So our timeline shows us now that there is this mid-period of time of 770 years, which again is no coincidence. But what all we see as well is this fourth beast, this fourth and final Leviathan, has ruled and reigned over the inhabitants of the earth for 1,260 years. Constantine I, he converted Rome to Christianity. But as I stated before, Rome was under constant division and fighting amongst itself and amongst the tribes of the north, the east, and the west. And it wasn't until in 768 AD, King Pepin the Younger died and left his kingdom to his two sons, Charles and Charlemagne. The brothers split the kingdom, but in 771 AD, Charlemagne followed his father in death. At that time, trouble with the Lombards rose again with Charles, and he came to the church's defense and forced the Lombards to surrender. From that point on, Charles went on to conquer almost all of Western Europe. In Latin, his name is Carolus Magnus. In French, it's Charlemagne. And in English, it's Charles the Great. So in the year 771 AD, we can see that it was at this time that God made Charles king. Now, Charles was not just the emperor of Rome. He was the Holy Roman Emperor. And it was in 800 that Pope Leo III crowned Charlemagne as the Holy Roman Emperor. But we can see from this that it's very clear that it is the Lord who decides these things. And it was in 771 that the Lord made Charles the Roman Catholic Emperor. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. Daniel 7:23. This final beast is the Roman Catholic Church. We can see that now without any doubt. It is diverse from all the others while still holding attributes from each of the 3 beasts that we saw before, being Egypt, Persia, and Grecia. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. So here again we see the 1260, and as we all know, it is the Roman Catholic Church that is the one that changed the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday, which it is not ever supposed to change. And they also are the ones that took the 10 Commandments. They took the final commandment and took one away, and they made one and turned it into two. Now, going back and looking at our timeline again, this is also extremely interesting. So we have the 1260, and we have the 1260, and of course we can see right between there, we have the 770 years, which is this midpoint of time between these two big time periods. What we see an abomination that has caused desolation. And this is the Dome of the Rock that was placed in the year 691. Between 691 and 692 AD, the Dome of the Rock was placed right in the very middle of the temple. Now remember, this does not take anything away from the coming tribulation and everything that we understand that goes with that. Again, we are seeing a double parallel throughout time, and this will be reverberated again through tribulation. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. So right here, everything we've gone over, we can see how the Roman Catholic Church, how it is ruling and reigning just like the 3 beasts that came before it. Just like the Egyptians, just like the Persian Empire, and just like the Grecian Empire. And we can also see that it is the Roman Catholic Church that is going to give the Antichrist all his authority and all his power. And the first ones he's going to be going after are the Jews. Pope calls for investigation to determine whether Israel attacks on Gaza are genocide. Pope Francis, in an upcoming book to be released ahead of his 2025 Jubilee, called for an investigation to determine whether Israel's actions in Gaza constitute genocide, according to the Vatican. In the Middle East, where the open doors of nations like Jordan or Lebanon continue to be a salvation for millions of people fleeing conflicts in the region, I am thinking above all of those who leave Gaza in the midst of the famine that has struck their Palestinian brothers and sisters. Given the difficulty of getting food and aid into their territory, he wrote in a passage released by the Vatican, according to some experts, what is happening in Gaza has the characteristics of a genocide. The Pope wrote, it should be carefully investigated to determine whether it fits into the technical definition formulated by jurists and international bodies. Right after the Pope released this, it wasn't 2 days later, and that is when the ICC, International Criminal Court, issued an arrest warrant for Netanyahu and the former Israeli defense minister. Now, if anyone doesn't think or understand or realize how much power and authority that the Roman Catholic Church has, that has been one of their greatest deceptions, is making people think that they don't have that much influence and they don't have that much power, And they absolutely do. Now, this all makes Revelation 17 become very, very clear. And it says, "Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication." So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. And I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints, and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Mystery Babylon. Now, I know there is a lot of people out there trying to convince everyone that America is Mystery Babylon, but it is not so. America is only 247 years old, and we fought for our independence from England, from the Roman Catholic Empire. And that is also why we had the separation between church and state. It was specifically about keeping the Roman Catholic Church out of our government, out of our decision making, and out of control of our lives. America is not the bad guy that everyone's trying to push. Or not everyone, but a lot of people. We see a lot of persecution going on against good people. We see persecution going on against the Jews. Persecution going on against America. And even persecution against an innocent president who's been falsely accused by many of being the Antichrist. And now we've just proven that there's no way that any of the American presidents are the Antichrist. And I've said this many times before. The more you see influencers out there desperately trying to push you to believe something, that's when you need to stop and think about what is really going on. Is this something from God, or is this something from his adversary? Okay, so on a side note, a couple of months ago, I had a raccoon, come up to my backyard and in my back door, and its back leg was completely torn up. Something had torn into this poor little raccoon, and it wasn't very old. And then it wasn't but a few days later, another raccoon came up, and its right hand was completely crushed. I think it was broken. At the time, I thought it was just completely no good to the animal anymore. It couldn't even stand on it. Then just a few days later, another raccoon came up, and its back left foot was messed up, and it couldn't walk on it. Then there was a black cat that came in the backyard, and it was just so scratched up, completely mangled. And then after that, a possum came that had a bunch of damage to it and a bunch of scratches. And I don't know what's going on out there. I don't have any pets, but I've trying to build kind of this little sanctuary for these animals, because I've had these raccoons coming up, and they're staying all day and all night in my backyard. So I've started putting out some food and water for them, and now I've got a bunch of animals that are coming, and it's turning into this sanctuary that I never intended, but I'm taking it as a sign from the Lord that these animals need help from something out there. And so I started trying to leave out some food and some water. And now I've gotten like 5 different possum, a ton of raccoon, even a skunk, even an armadillo has come up. But during this process, during this time, every single one of these animals has been healing. Even the one that's hand I thought was completely no good to it anymore, it has gotten the use of its hand back. So, this isn't something that I can continue to handle on my own. So for all of you animals lovers out there, or all of my brothers and sisters who might be willing to help me with this endeavor, I could really, really use the help, because this has turned into something bigger than I can handle on my own. So I'm going to leave my Cash App and my Venmo in the description. So if any of y'all would like to help try and donate to this cause, it would really, really help me. Because now there's a bunch of cats back there. Or not a bunch of cats, there's like 5 of them. But there's a mom cat and she's got 2 brand new little kittens. And it's starting to get cold. And I want to try and build some little homes or something for them to keep them warm for the winter. As well as continue to help the animals that are coming up that are being injured from, I don't know if it's a bobcat or what's out there. But something's tearing up these animals. And I want to have a place for them to be able to be safe. So if you'd like to donate to that, or even if you'd just like to be a sponsor of the channel or a Patreon, I would appreciate it. So I'm going to leave in the links and in the description how you can donate if you'd like to. I could really use the help, and I thank you everyone who's here with me. And I want to give a special thanks to Donna Lee. Thank you for the super thanks. I appreciate you so very much. She said, thanks for all you do. Blessings to you and looking forward to meeting you in the clouds. I am so sorry it took me so long to get to this, but this video has taken me a while. But my goodness, I appreciate you so much. You are such a blessing to me. Thank you, Donna Lee. And thank you so much as well, Anna Miller, for the super thanks from you too. I appreciate you so much. That was so very sweet of you. I appreciate all of y'all for taking the time to watch these videos. And taking the time to leave me nice, sweet comments. And I really, really hope that this just showed you all so very much. But thank you again, Anna. I appreciate you so very much. And thank you for being here with me. Now, with that said, I'm so thankful to have you all here with me today. Thank you for watching this video. I'm sorry it took me so long to get this out. This was a huge study, and I've been working on it for 2 weeks straight. It turned into so much more than I ever imagined when I first started. And the research I've had to do for this video has just been ginormous and very, very taxing, and I hope it blessed each and every one of you. And I'm going back to kind of doing my regular videos, because I don't ever want to do a video this difficult again. But I hope it blessed you, and I hope it showed you some wonderful positive things, because this also shows again that Jesus will return for the end of tribulation in the year 2031. I will see you all again very, very soon.